Good morning. Today, our lesson has to do with the author's call to action and is the evidence the author provided sufficient and relevant? Does it prove the call to action? Does it convince the reader to do something for the cause? So, readers identify and analyze the author's call to action by asking, is the evidence sufficient and relevant? So to begin, readers identify and analyze the author's call to action by asking, is the evidence sufficient and relevant? And the article that we're going to work with for the model example is the article titled Smart About Medicine. So in my model, I'm going to be using the article titled Smart About Medicine. So first, just some background information. An author's call to action is what the author is persuading the reader to do, something or think a certain way in order to support the cause. So, for example, in the article Smart About Medicine, the author's call to action is for the readers to use medicine responsibly. So the author included subheadings telling the reader what to do in order to use the medicine responsibly. For example, do take all your antibiotics. Don't take someone else's medicine. Do make sure you are taking the correct dose. Do find out whether your medicine shouldn't be mixed. Don't take expired meds. So those are a follow-up to the author's call to action, which is take medicine responsibly. And these 5 steps are ways you can abide by taking medicine responsibly. So then this next step is, once we identify the author's call to action, we have to ask, is the evidence sufficient and relevant? And in this article, the author's call to action happens to be take medicine responsibly. So now I have to reread the article and decide, is the evidence supporting the call to action sufficient and relevant? And one thing I'm looking for when I reread is there a personal perspective that is valuable? Also, is a voice of authority included to help prove that the call to action is necessary? So in the article Smart About Medicine, the first section, we learned that the call to action is use medicine responsibly. And then in the second section, do take all of your antibiotics. As I reread this, I learn that the author does include an expert, a voice of authority. The author includes Dr. Tanya Arora, a pediatrician at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. Doctors are experts in regards to medication. They know what medications help overcome illness. They know what medications have bad reactions. When you are taking numerous medications, they'll know which ones have bad reactions together. And so they're very knowledgeable about medication. This particular author includes a voice of authority, Dr. Tanya Arora. The call to action is take medicine responsibly by taking all your antibiotics. And the follow-up is proving that, yes, you should take all antibiotics, because when you don't take all your antibiotics, the bacteria are undertreated and the bacteria have a chance to multiply. And this comes from an expert, Dr. Tanya Arora, a pediatrician at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. So in my opinion, the author has used a voice of authority to prove the call to action, to prove that, yes, readers should take medicine responsibly. So now I have to put it all into writing. Readers identify and analyze the author's call to action by asking, is the evidence sufficient and relevant? And in the article, Smart About Medicine, it says, read on to learn more about responsible medicine use. What evidence does the author provide to support this call to action? Is the evidence sufficient and relevant? Explain. So first, I just have to start with restating my question in sentence form and answering it. Essentially, yes, the evidence is sufficient. So that's my answer. I just have to put it in a sentence form by restating the question in sentence form. So my example sentence in the article Smart About Medicine, the author's call to action is for readers to use medicine responsibly. The evidence used to support this call to action is sufficient and relevant because voices of authority are used to prove it is necessary and smart to use medicine responsibly. So now I have to follow up with cited evidence to proves that the evidence is sufficient and relevant. This is where I want to bring in the voice of authority, where I want to be clear to say the author purposely included a voice of authority. So my example, for example, Dr. Tanya Arora, a pediatrician at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, is quoted in the text. She said, "When bacteria are undertreated, they have a chance to multiply." And there's my in-text citation. If people misuse or abuse antibiotics, individual might continue to be sick because the bacteria have multiplied. Dr. Arora's is an expert in the area of medicine, and her statement helps prove it is necessary to take medicine responsibly. I have an error here. It should just be Dr. Arora, no apostrophe S. Dr. Arora is an expert in the area of medicine, and her statement helps prove it is necessary to take medicine responsibly. Now, a second piece of evidence. Another example proving readers should take medicine responsibly comes from a voice of authority. Steve Passierb is the president of the Partnership for a Drug-Free America. He helps prove that readers should never take another person's prescription medication. If the prescription drug was not prescribed for you, you don't have your own doctor's knowledge of how the prescription medicine will interact with your own body or with other medicines you may be taking. Again, in-text citation. So now I have to wrap everything up with an explanation, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the evidence is sufficient and relevant to support this call for action. Take medicine responsibly. So my explanation. Clearly, Jennifer Majid has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that readers must take medicine responsibly. She included sufficient and relevant information from two experts in the field of medicine to convince readers that taking medicine responsibly is necessary. I was very clear to include that two different voices of authority were used to convince the reader that it is important to take medicine responsibly. So in my opinion, Smart About Medicine has a clear call to action, take medicine responsibly, and it has sufficient and relevant evidence to prove one must take medicine responsibly because the experts in the field are providing the information to prove one must take medicine responsibly. So now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to identify and analyze the author's call to action by asking, is the evidence sufficient and relevant? You will be working with the article titled, Should Schools Have Dress Codes? Now, two authors argue opposite sides of the school dress code issue. In paragraphs 10 through 14, author Lee Rowland's call to action is that schools should not have dress codes. What evidence does Lee Rowland provide to support this call to action? Is the evidence sufficient and relevant? Explain. So you will be restating the question in sentence form as well as providing an answer. If you need to rewind this video slightly so you have a good model to look at, you are welcome to use my model example. Then, following the restated sentence, question and sentence form and answer, cite one piece of textual evidence, cite a second piece of textual evidence, and then explain. Explain. If you're saying the evidence is sufficient and relevant, explain why it's considered to be sufficient and relevant. If you're saying the evidence is not sufficient and relevant, then explain why it's not sufficient and relevant. And so you will be provided with this exact page. It's a blank page that you can use to write out your